You actually interned for Steve Jobs at Apple. Now that caught my attention.
And I came upon this book called The Little Kingdom by Mike Moritz. I started finding a way to hound. I didn't apply for other jobs. I was just like, I know what I want to do. I'm going to go and work for Steve. This gentleman by the name of Raj Singh, who is a legend in the Valley, and I thought there was a great way to actually make it scale. I was fascinated with the idea. There was something massive happening with APIs. It is an evolution of all the WS star stuff that we did. No one would have ever thought that Microsoft would have done what they've done with OpenAI. It's just amazing what they've actually done. We're using Apigee and we're very happy with it. I'm like, thank you. This has been a blast. This is stuff we know because we lived it. Just getting a chance to have the conversation is very, very enjoyable. And it's great to be talking to somebody as knowledgeable as you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Encounter, where we talk to senior leaders from the tech industry to get their unique perspectives and insights. Today's guest is Chet Kapoor, Chairman and CEO of DataStax. Prior to this, he was the CEO of Apigee, which was acquired by Google, and now it's a part of core building blocks of Google Cloud Platform. So, Chet, delighted to have you on my show. I'm a big fan of your previous work and what you do at DataStax.
Thank you. Janikram, it is a pleasure to be here. I had a chance to look at your channel, and you have some legends on this, so it really is a privilege.
Awesome. So when I was researching this interview, Chet, I actually stumbled upon a very interesting aspect that you actually interned for Steve Jobs at Apple in mid-80s, and that caught my attention. So tell us about your journey from Kolkata to Cupertino.
So born and brought up in Calcutta. And for those of you that live in India or been to other places like India, there's something called the British Council Library. There's lots of real books. My mother used to drop me off. I used to be an avid reader. And I came upon this book called The Little Kingdom by Mike Moritz. He used to be a Times reporter and then went on and ran Sequoia Capital. And he wrote this book called Little Kingdom about two Steves, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. And I read it back to back in I think in one setting. And I was like, I want to go and work for Steve Jobs. And that was 1983. Got my act together, took computer classes, really liked it. So it was a passion. Came to the States. And by then, Steve had made the transition from being kicked out of Apple, very, just seeing what's happening with Sam and OpenAI, very similar things. But he kicked out of Apple and he started a company called Next Computers. My goal of going to work for Steve had not changed just because of how I had learned he'd changed the industry. And so when Next started coming out with this product in 1986 and 87, I started finding a way to, I would say, hound the people at Next, right? Because I just was so interested in doing that. I got their attention, did a bunch of stuff with the products, and they had a campus consultant program. So I became a part of Next very early in my career. So literally 4 years later from when I started, I was actually working for Next as an intern or campus consultant, as you call it. And then what's interesting is I didn't apply for other jobs, right? When I was graduating from Arizona State, I was just like, I know what I want to do. I'm going to go and work for Steve. Next never hired college graduates because it was the highest concentration of such smart people that it was never something they thought about. But they took 2 or 3 of us in 1990 and actually bought us on board. And quite frankly, it was awesome because they didn't know what to do with us, right? So every 9 months, we would have a new job because we would keep growing right into it. So it was a phenomenal experience.
Fantastic. And Chet, both you and I have been in the industry for a long time. I started my career when XML web services were hot. I joined Microsoft as a web services evangelist, and maybe you were with BEA back then.
Yeah.
I remember Ariba, Microsoft, BEA, all of them getting together and defining this WSDL and the SOAP standards. So feels like a previous life, but yeah, it was about it was in early 2000. So um, I want to ask you about how you made your transition to Apigee. I think you were at BEA heading their the most popular app servers, and BEA was popular for that before Oracle acquired them. So tell
Yeah.
us about your transition from BEA to Apigee.
So BA was very interesting. I actually ran the integration business at BEA, and BEA. And by the way, I was there. I was part of the executive team that was making the decisions on the product side, on making decisions on WS Star. IBM was very involved. You named Ariba. I mean, a lot of people don't realize, but the WS Star standards were formed in 2002, and exactly because I just remember that distinctly. It's and what you learn from doing that is don't let standard bodies define stuff, right? The best thing to do is let developers define it and go from there, right? And so because SOAP was great, but it was also massive, right? And JSON came out to be a better interface to deal with. So I was doing that, and then after that I left to run an open source app server company called Glucode, which IBM acquired in a very short period of time. So I worked at IBM, which was phenomenal, right? Again, it was a great experience. And as I was leaving IBM, this gentleman by the name of Raj Singh, who is a legend in the Valley, has created a lot of great companies. I think there was an article that said he created $11 billion worth of market cap, right? And so single-handedly as an investor and as an operator. And so he contacted me, and he had people like Ravi Chandra and Ravi Krishna that he was working very closely with. And they were doing something called an XML router, right? And basically what they were doing was they were networking folks, and they were applying networking principles to XML, right? Just like IP, they thought about XML as being an IP packet and applying those things. And I thought it was very fascinating because I've been in middleware for a long time, and I thought there was a great way to actually make it scale. And so I was fascinated with the idea. I joined when they were like, it was a small team. It was all in Bangalore, and we had not shipped a product, and we had no customers. And so that was January 7th, 2007 was my first day at Apigee. We raised money between Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, or Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers in 2008. Pivoted to be in the API space. You might remember the iPhone was coming out in 2007. The mobile revolution was taking off. We definitely wanted to attach ourselves. Twitter did not have an interface. It was only an API. Google Maps APIs were taking off. So we knew there was something massive happening with APIs. And quite frankly, it is an evolution of all the WS Star stuff that we did, right? Or web services. And so it was a phenomenal opportunity. We had to pivot a little bit, right? Go left, go right before we got the wind. And we got that, and it was just it was a great experience. We made an industry called API management. No one knew, no one cared about it. We did it. We took the company public, and then obviously had an opportunity to be part of Google.
Absolutely.
Great experience. Very fond, very, very, very fond memories. Every time I talk to a lot of customers, and they all start with, "We're using Apigee and we're very happy with it." I'm like, "Thank you."
So Chet,
it's still one of my babies.
Awesome. So one of the things that I noticed in your career spectrum and the whole span of your industry experience is you have been at the right place at the right time. When app servers were and enterprise application integration was big, you were at BEA, and then when API economy was taking off, you went on to lead Apigee, and then you became a part of the hyperscalers at Google, and now you are leading the whole vector database and the generative AI data lake story. It's amazing how your career has kind of aligned with the hottest trends of the industry.
It's interesting. If I can take a sailing analogy, is it the sailor or is it the wind? Right? And the answer is always both. Right? So I think it was not clear that Apigee should have been in the mobile space, in the API space, right? Because when we first went to all the meetups for iPhones, they all wanted to build Angry Birds. No one wanted to access backends. But we believed that people would actually build real apps that would actually change their lives going off and doing it. So we continued to stay with our belief, right? And what we wanted to go off and do. And with the same thing with DataStax, right? I mean, this time last year, exactly this time last year, the only conversation we were having at home, by the way, at home on the dinner table as well as at work, was about ChatGPT, because ChatGPT was really taking off this time last year. And our take was literally, we sat down in the beginning, the first quarter of the year, and said, we're so excited because we're geeks. Right at the end of the day, that's what we do. Like, we build products for ourselves and other people that change their lives, that we have to be part of it. And so it was not that we were, just so that very clear, it was not like we were sitting there and Gen AI came and swept us and took us away. We had to move in that direction to catch the wind. And that's why the sailing analogy. And so I am thrilled that I have the opportunity, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to actually pivot a company that I run very quickly into the, to have the wind in our sails, right? And so we're doing that, and we're having a blast, because at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, building companies is not easy, right? I mean, it's funny. We had a context team meeting last week, and we had 80 people all over the world come over. It's not easy at all. And so the only way to actually, and especially in a crowded market where everybody believes it's an opportunity, the only way to get away from the grind or go over the grind is to innovate, right? And innovate in everything you do. And so we love doing that. We love working with the people we do, and we love, building products that developers love. So if you keep that simple thing, right, we're going to have relevant conversations with developers about products that change their lives and the companies they work for, right? And you keep that, it just works out.
Amazing. So going back, so how did the Google Cloud deal happen? Tell us about how that entire discussion went, and what made you sign up for that.
So our stock had not fared well, and independent of that, right? SAP was a great partner, and SAP got very interested in actually acquiring DataStax. At Apigee, right? They're just very, very interested in it. And our take was, listen, let's keep doing a partnership, because we knew as a public company, I knew as a public company, that the moment we got an offer, we would have to actually run a process. Because as a private company, you can talk to your board and say no, but as a public company, you have to run a process. And they kept saying, Quentin from SAP was very insistent that he wanted to do it. So we actually got a term sheet in May, and I said, okay, great, now we have to go through this. It was interesting. In the end, we actually retained Morgan Stanley. In the end of May, early June, this is 2016, we looked at this and said, if we had a choice, we don't know whether we'll have a choice or not, how would we stack rank the companies that want to acquire us? Because once you start a process, it kind of comes to an end, and we were a valuable asset. And Google was number one. Google was the last company to engage with us, the very last. We had AWS in the mix, we had SAP in the mix, we had Oracle in the mix. And so it was interesting, and if you had a few others, but Google was the last one. And I spent some time with Diane in the late part of July, in early August, and then they moved very rapidly. And so Google was on top of our list. The terms were favorable. And we also felt like we could have an impact on the GCP business. Right? It's not just what you've done, it's about what you are going to do, right? Because, we still believe that we can have an impact on the industry, right? And so we thought that would be a great place. And Google was awesome, right? I mean, two great things. You're solving intergalactic problems. And the second thing is they are very grounded in being, in technology, right? So if you're a geek and you like solving massive problems, it's the best place in the world. And so we had a great time at Google.
Awesome. And even today, I see Apigee becoming the core building block, whether it is Beyond Corp or API management, API throttling, anything. So Apigee is becoming one of the core building blocks of GCP, and it is continuing to grow, which is a fantastic thing. So now coming to what you do at DataStax. So I have been tracking DataStax for a while, and it's always known as the managed Cassandra, a commercial Cassandra company. But now looks like you are betting big on generative AI and the AstraDB and the whole vector database momentum has kind of influenced your product roadmap. So tell us about two things. One, what actually made you take up the role at DataStax, and then your vision for DataStax for next 18 months?
So as I said earlier, right, I really did believe that I would stay at Google forever, right? I knew the right people there. I was solving the right problems, all of that. I really did believe that. And what I realized after being there for close to 3 years was that there was getting this pull, this tug to go off and do something. And I wanted to go off and build a durable business. And it was very clear at that point to me, being a middleware person and adjusting to data and analytics, was I had to be in the data space. I talked to a bunch of people I knew, and everybody said, they didn't necessarily say databases, but they said data space. And I said, great. So I was lucky enough that I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of companies, maybe start something, to go and run something bigger. And I created a spreadsheet, and there were 4 criteria: product market fit, TAM, people, and something called durability. Durability is some combination of P&L and culture, so that you can create something big. It's a Jeff Bezos word. And DataStax fared really well, right? PMF, Cassandra, right? I mean, it's a triangle, and it's on top of the triangle. The opportunity is to move it down. These are the people that build the most scalable database in the world, right? With Cassandra, the TAM is very, very big. And then the durability piece was you can create your own culture by getting the right people. So we did that. That was 2019. It's now been 4 years. We've survived COVID. We've actually, done well through the headwinds, and come a long way. And the big thing with DataStax, and as just to refresh people, DataStax is built on Apache Cassandra, right? But there were a couple of things that we did very quickly when I joined. And the strategy was simple: 3 C's and a D, right? Embrace the community, grow the core, which is software business, efficiently. And the third one was land the cloud, because we had missed the cloud wave. And the last thing was become a data company, right? Not just a database company. And so we've hugged the Cassandra community. Cassandra 5.0 is coming out in December, which is great. It has ACID in it. It's got vector in it. We've been putting things back. We're an open source core company. That's what we do. The TAM continues to grow. Forget about just NoSQL. It's also vector, right? It's growing quite a bit. The number of people that we brought on board gets better and better. I salivate. I'm like, thank you for the opportunity for me to lead you. That actually makes a difference. And then we become a data company, right? We went off and we got into the Pulsar space, data and motion space. We went and bought a company called Cascada, and now we're in the vector database space. And we are not in the vector database space just for vector retrieval. We're actually doing things like you can do with RAG and things like that. So it's been a phenomenal experience. And there are 2 pivots, right? One was becoming a cloud company, and the second thing was becoming a Gen AI company. And the Gen AI company has gone a lot faster, because once you get with change, right, then the change becomes easier the second time around. I'm very impressed with how our customers are perceiving us, how our partners are perceiving us, and how our employees are perceiving us. So it's been a blast on how we got here. As far as your second question goes, listen, I think our mission is simple, right? Is every company, right? Our goal is simple. Let me start with that, then I'll explain. Help developers build Gen AI apps that change the trajectory of the enterprises that they work for. Gen AI is here, right? It's massive, right? And so it actually builds on mobile, it builds on cloud, it builds on, it builds on everything before, right? So it's actually continuing to do that, right? So it builds on web, mobile, and cloud. And so Gen AI will go really fast. And every enterprise is going to make a decision on what the AI stack is going to be over the next 9 to 18 months, probably more like 12 months. And we are driving really, really hard to make sure that we are part of it, right? And what that means is we are not only going to give you the most scalable, the best vector database in the world and the more easy to use database, but we're also going to make sure that we are very integrated with your ecosystem, with the tools that you care about. So the hardest part about creating enterprise apps, as you well know, right? As you well know, as a technologist, Jennikram, is that, haikus are easy, right? You can do haikus of ChatGPT. That's awesome. And by the way, I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I mean that in a good way, because they are entertaining, right? I mean, you ask a question, you can get different answers, which it's a great thing. But you cannot have apps hallucinate, right? If a financial services app gives the wrong answer, they're liable for that answer. So we need what we call relevant or accurate AI. And to do that, it's not just enough to give you retrieval, right, from a database at speed. Yeah, we do a lot of really good things. You can write and read at the same time. There's no ingest time. We do all that. But how do we give you RAG patterns that work really well? So you can do retrieval augmented generation. So you can go back and forth, right, and figure out what does your LLM say, what does your vector database say, and come up with the right answer. So you can actually make it more relevant and accurate AI. So our goal is to actually make sure that we're giving you as accurate an answer from your generative AI app. And the way we do that is data, right? Because at the end of the day, there is no AI without data. There is no AI without data. And we hold 60% of FedEx's data. Verizon's $100 billion business runs on us. iCloud runs on Apache Cassandra, and on and on and on, right? You know what all we do and what the Apache Cassandra stuff does. So we want to make it really easy for people to build accurate apps.
Fantastic. You actually answered my follow-up question. So because we already covered that, I want to ask you something very interesting. So Chet, when I look at your career, the whole spectrum, from your very early days of Next to DataStax, you've always worked for a commercial software company.
Yes.
And looks like, DataStax is the first time that you're actually dealing with an open source product, which is like, you're of course selling the commercial version, but this is a very unique value prop where you have to maintain and contribute to the community. At the same time, sell and generate revenue for the company. How do you see this different from your previous gigs and your engagements?
So I had the chance when I was at BEA. One of the board members from Warburg Pincus asked me to take a look at JBoss, right? And that's one of the reasons I got intrigued with the open source model and went off and ran Glue Code. Glue Code was an open source J2E app server, right? That was competing with JBoss. So I got very exposed to that world, right, in 2004, 2005, and I've lived through it. I am a firm believer in open source business models, and I'm specifically using open source business models, right? Open source is great for many reasons, right? Innovation happens everywhere. There's meritocracy that shows up, and you can harden it through the community. You can actually, there's transparency. All those things are beautiful. They're well understood. The question is, how do you make a business around an open source core? Right. And there's a very good industry example of that. Right. First of all, MySQL did it. But the second one that a lot of people don't talk about is Red Hat. Right. But they did it in the software space. There's another company that has done a phenomenal job of it. And some people would say too good a job of it. It's called AWS. Right. They've taken a lot of open source projects and created cloud products. So this is not uncharted territory. It is a hard balance, right? Because not all innovation can happen as a bazaar, right? Because there's so many people in the bazaar, right? So a lot of innovation lands up happening in the cathedral, but you have to be very committed to your core, right? You have to be committed to your core that innovation that you're going to do in the cathedral is actually going to move to the bazaar, just like we did with our vector stuff. Right, we did it with 4 people and a dog very quickly because we've been building on it for the last 4 years. We had secondary indexes that we were building on top of Cassandra. We went off and did it and said, okay, now we're done. Let's do a CEP, right? We'll do an exception. It's called CEP 30, and let's go and actually make it a part of Cassandra. So when Cassandra 5.0 beta comes out in December, it's going to be part of it, right? So that part is, so the one challenge is how do you stay true to your core? Because the tendency is, hey, we are going to hold on to this product and make this the value add of what we sell as a software product. I don't believe in that. I think you go back to the community and you get dividends that are really good. The second thing is you have to work hard and making sure that the software product the software that you're innovating with, that you have the best cloud service. And that part we are damn good at, right? We have a team that's very good at Shankar Ramaswamy. He's been around the block. He ran engineering at Apigee. He ran a large portion of the engineering at Google Maps. Right. So we've done this before as a team. So we know how to take software and create a multi-tenant serverless with isolation, with all the monitoring, with the right SLAs, and provide it to a business that can run, their business on our products. So it's a combination of innovating in the community, and you have to figure out how. That's one. And the second thing is you have to make sure you deliver a world-class service. If you do those things well, it is not that hard. In fact, it's preferred to have an open source model. Quite frankly, Janikaram, if I actually started a company today, again, from scratch, I would go one of two ways. I would say I'm either going to build everything myself, right? Everything myself, and I'll keep it all closed source, right? That's the Steve Jobs way of doing things, right? You have control over the entire stack. But that's practically impossible in today's world. Practically impossible because the world has changed. And then the question is what part I'm going to be open source and what not, and I would go full open source all the way through. I would do it again and again and again.
Very well said. And Chet, one interesting anecdote. It's funny that you actually brought up this Cathedral and Bazaar. And where I heard this the first time? This was from Sam Ramji when he was heading open source at Microsoft in 2005 when Steve Ballmer was calling Linux as cancer.
No, I think Sam. I've known Sam for a long time. We worked together at BEA. We worked together at Apigee. We also worked together at DataStax. Sam's a good friend. So he's there's an article that this came out on. So none of us are original with our thought process on this, but this Cathedral and Bazaar, I think there's an article out there that a bunch of us probably read 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and we continue to quote it and in different ways.
Yeah, but when I actually get a chance to speak to Sam, I want to talk to him about his experience of leading open source strategy at Microsoft during Steve Ballmer's era. It was the most difficult job.
It's funny. People still. I think if you looked really hard, you'll see scars on his back. He still has them, right? Because he took a lot of arrows.
And during the same time, I was the SOAP evangelist at Microsoft, and I used to go around showing the SOAP toolkit on Microsoft and exposing Java Beans as web services and showing interop. So that was very difficult.
Extremely. But now look at where Microsoft is, right? I mean, I don't think it's funny. I was just there last week, spent some time with a bunch of different people, including Scott Guthrie, who is a superstar, right?
Right.
A lot of people, because of the Microsoft veneer, he does not get a ton of credit, but he's done a lot of very visionary things for the industry. But you can actually see it, right? I mean, Microsoft made this big bet on OpenAI, and you can actually go back to some of the stuff that was done with Linux and SOAP and things like that, where Microsoft said, and even before that with Internet Explorer, right, where Microsoft said, we're not going to win by doing everything ourselves. We have to make sure that we are part of the industry of some sort. And that, that builds over a period of time, right? Because Microsoft is a very successful business. And no one would have ever thought that, Microsoft would have done what they've done with OpenAI, right? It's just amazing what they've actually done. And now they're in the conversation. It's not that different, by the way, from, what Arvind Krishna did with Red Hat. Right, because it's all about being relevant, and that's the thing we talked about in the sailing analogy. Is it the wind or is it the sailor, right, or is it the boat, right? And you just have to make sure you bring it into the wind, right? Otherwise you're never going to catch it.
Fantastic. So Chet, this discussion made me nostalgic. We went back to the days of enterprise application integration, the web logic, all the way to vector databases. So and during that, you shared a lot of wisdom and insights, which my audience would love to understand and gain from your experience. So thanks so much for being on my show. It's been a privilege to have you on my show, and I look forward to talking to you in 2024, middle of 2024, when vector databases become mainstream and become a part of the core data platform.
Thank you, Janikaram. This has been a blast. And by the way, just going back, and this is stuff we know because we lived it, right? So just getting a chance to actually have the conversation is very, very enjoyable, and it's great to be talking to somebody as knowledgeable as you.
Thank you.